Hello everyone who's also wanted to swim over to NVIDIA headquarters and slap someone. I am BorderWise and welcome back to From the Depths Most Wanted, where we have our second entry in non-Neater craft, custom campaign craft, and Caravonian Rebellion custom campaign craft. This is the Cardinal class Battlesub of the faction the Cult of Deus Ex Machina, which is basically Warhammer 40k Tech Marines, but all Submarines. They're an interesting faction to fight. So, I ran into one of these personally ages ago, when I was doing my playthrough of the Caravonian Rebellion on stream, which you can go back and watch that, it's like all the streams. That is the playthrough where I learned about Warp Jutsu, and I made a whole separate video on that, I think. And so yeah, this thing is a bit of a pain in the butt, and I believe it has actually been updated since the last time I've seen it, because I don't remember these little particle cannons on the side. Maybe my memory is just bad. But anyway, this thing is a nasty surprise. If you're not used to fighting underwater battleships, which this is. And we should probably hop straight into the strengths of this thing. The first and most obvious thing is that it has 5 twin 500mm APHE railgun turrets. These hurt a lot. So we go here and we look over here. You can see all the stats of the shell. They're pure railguns. There's no gunpowder in this. Mostly solid bodies, armor-piercing heads, super cav base, of course, because they're firing underwater. And explosive damage about 4,000. Armor-piercing about 27. But almost 27,000 kinetic damage. So this thing basically requires heavy armor to stop. If you don't have that, this thing will punch very deep into your craft and make a huge mess. I actually combat tested this thing recently against the Steel Strider's Great White, and the Great White doesn't have great anti-submarine weaponry, it just has a few torpedoes, and this thing just demolished it. It would, if it wasn't for the lack of EMP insulation, this thing would be a, supremely nasty, and would probably be able to take on a lot of neater designs. But yeah, so that's the main guns, 5 of them as you can see. 2 facing forward, 1 facing backward, 1 on port and starboard. It also has the particle cannons that I mentioned before. I think this is the new edition. These are mostly just for shooting things that are in front, behind, or directly above it. So a lot of submarines, if you get directly above them, that's generally a good idea, because you can just drop stuff straight on them, like mines, or even things that normally have trouble getting through water, like lasers and plasma and crams, can actually do significant damage to a submarine, especially since this one's not that deep underwater, it's about 60 meters. These particle cannons basically alleviate that weakness somewhat. They can and will shoot straight up and put holes in things, so something to watch out for. Piercing pack, and you can see about 8,000 damage each. They're not that big. These aren't controlled by AI. Ooh, interesting. Whoopsie daisy, aperture. We got a problem. So yeah, there is that. It is of course a submarine, which means that a whole range of weapon types are less effective against it. So crams, laser, plasma, missiles which are not torpedoes, and APS that doesn't have sufficient muzzle velocity or is not super cav. Yeah, you're gonna have a trouble with that. It also has missiles. It has a few missiles just here. They're not amazing, but they do hurt. 5,000 HE damage. Things in the Caravonian Rebellion generally don't have signal processors, because the campaign is designed to be more beginner-friendly than neater, and the disclaimer I have to say here is that if you've beaten neater, you're not going to have trouble with the Caravonian Rebellion. The only reason I occasionally had trouble with it is A, the factions are a little different from what you're used to when you're fighting things in neater, and B, because I basically lulled myself into a false sense of security because I kept thinking of the campaign as easier than neater. Easier than neater doesn't mean it's easy, it's still from the depths, and there's still times you can get caught flat-footed if you're not careful, and don't get cocky when playing any campaign, really. Unless you played it through before, multiple times, and you know exactly what to expect. Good advice in general. It also has torpedo interceptors, which is generally a good idea on a submarine. Here they are. They're just tiny little missile interceptors with a 1-turn, interestingly enough. yeah, I'm not sure why there's a 1-turn. APNs are usually much better. That does explain why, if this thing is absolutely swarmed with torpedoes, you can hit it. Whoops, I got ahead of myself right there. If this thing gets to about 80% health, and let's see if I can simulate that. Is this the that's fire. We don't want fire, we want explosions. This. If I do this... Whoops. Slow there. I think that's not damn it. So if I just do this, load all the guns off. Because this thing does have ACB somewhere. That, come on. Okay, so a few 10% more stuff. Right, I'm gonna do this without actually 10 engines. Come on, what are you doing that much? Come on. Come on! Aha! There we go. Once it drops about below 83% health or so, I hope I didn't blow props off there, the thing will surface. You can see in the altitude meter it's surfacing very slowly, and that's so it can keep going and prolong the fight a little bit, which is, I like that. It makes it a little bit easier to finish off, but at the same time it means the fight isn't over too quickly just because of a sinking despawn. So that's a nice feature in pretty much all submarines in the Caravonian Rebellion. And you can, whoopsie daisy, misclicked. Let's try that again. So you can see if it's back above 85% health, it'll sink back down. So both a strength and a weakness, we'll get to that. It's also got pretty thick armor. You probably noticed that from me trying to blow it up. Took quite a few knocks before it dropped below 85% health. Multiple layers of thick metal, like on the bow in particular. Lots of spaced armor, like there's a lot of space in between here and the ammo, for instance. And then we've got a heavy armor citadel around the guns themselves. And they're actually quite thick. You can see here it's kind of a double thickness on the edges, which might be overkill, but, like, you know, it's okay. Yeah, around the guns, that ring of heavy armor, and around the AI, I think, it also has it. Where is the AI on this? It's somewhere. It is somewhere. Here it is. You can see it's not designed to be EMP resistant. You can see this AI section here is directly touching heavy armor, which means, like, this thing does instantly die if you hit it with EMP. But yeah, it's supposed to be like that. That is deliberate. That is deliberate on Aperture's part. Don't go hassle them. Alright. We've already gotten to the weaknesses a little bit. This thing that relies on props for buoyancy. So if I go and delete the steam engine, and I do wonder if... where is the steam engine? It's here. So if I just yeetus deletus this whole thing... Where's the other bit of engines? Where are they? Where are they? I cannot find them. Oh, here it is. If I just yeetus deletus... wait a minute. If I get rid of these as well... You'll notice we immediately start to sink. That is because this is kind of a brick, and it has no natural buoyancy of its own, which wouldn't be a problem for a submarine, except that if this thing's engines get taken out, it sinks like a rock. And this is common to many things in the Caravonian Rebellion. It's just, it's a way of making vehicles quickly. You just stick up props on them and let a PID do most of the work, because actually balancing a craft to be, like, have passive buoyancy is time-consuming. Aperture had, I think, well over 100 vehicles to build for this campaign, so ain't nobody got time for that. So that is a weakness, though. It is vulnerable to EMP, so let's just go back in here and undo all my good work. Shift-delete is very convenient, by the way. Right, so now you should get out there, and if I actually spawn this thing in on the enemy team... We should be able to hit there. If I go over here, you're over here, have my handy EMP tool ready to go. Let's see here. Let's hit you with, what's a decent EMP barrage? If I hit this, oh, I don't know, like roughly in the middle with an EMP barrage, you can see that didn't do a hell of a lot. Maybe it used to be a bit better. How about here? There's places on here where if you... Yep, there it is, AI dead. That wasn't many. 10,000 EMP is like a decently big EMP torpedo. So yeah, this thing gets AI deaded very easily, as Caravonian designs tend to be, which is why, when playing the Caravonian Rebellion, there's a disclaimer that if, you shouldn't use EMP if you want a challenge, because, if you use EMP, you will just, like, you know, headshot everything, and it'll be pretty boring, which is why when I played through it, I didn't use EMP. And so it wasn't boring at all. It's also got no active defenses. Wait, no, it does have... That's an old note. Get out of here. Get out of here. It's got those torp interceptors. So let's just spawn you in yet again. Oh, I'm spawning things in willy-nilly. Whee! Whee! So it has good and bad armor. There are spaces in the armor where there, well, actually is no space armor. So you can see right up here on the barbette, so to speak, it is a layer of heavy armor. Using heavy armor like this is mainly a way to save on space, because it's a very volume-efficient form of health and armor put together. But a heat shell will go straight through this thing, and these turrets don't have armor of their own and no space armor between them, so Supercav heat will annihilate this thing completely. And because the turrets don't really have structural support of their own, yeah, they go kablooey. What else? The target prioritization will also focus on the closest target, whatever they may be. So if I spawn in this, and I spawn in... let's spawn in something like that, and then I spawn in something bigger, like that. You will notice that the main guns are shooting at these little planes, which are much harder to detect and, like, much harder to hit. So this is kind of a bit of a weakness of this thing. It can be distracted pretty easily. It only has the one AI as well, so it doesn't really use main and secondary weapons separately. But now it is actually going to lock onto the correct target, and you can see, like, just chunks of blocks falling off this poor little Red Alert Soviet-style missile cruiser. By the way, if you've ever stuck for good missile designs, or good missile decoration, I should say, like, really, load up the Caravonian Rebellion. The Aperture and Jacavalier, I believe it's both of them, have done a really good job on the missile deco. It's like, it's really nice. Actually have stolen them more than once, actually. Because stealing is not stealing if you can call it artistic inspiration. But anyway, so also I'm going to mention again the whole when it drops below 85% health thing, it rises again, because that, while that does enable it to survive longer, it also means that it suddenly becomes vulnerable to everything it's usually immune against. So that is both a strength and a weakness, which is why it's mentioned twice. And with that, heading on to how to survive this thing. Well, it's already being demonstrated right now. Staying out of the water entirely. You will see up here, it's got these little radar buoys here, just so it can kind of see above the water a little bit. They're not decoys, because this thing doesn't really need radar decoys, because it's underwater, herpy derp. Although I guess they do double as that when it's risen out of the water. But anyway, this thing is having a really hard time shooting at these little planes, and these planes are fast, but they're not that wiggly and evasive. A flying squirrel, this thing would never hit it. Even the packs are having trouble right now. Also, you do want to move fast and keep your distance, so those particle cannon shots just don't get lucky. And if you do want to tank it, bear in mind AP shells, you gotta use shields, and in your armor you need, like, slopes. You need wedges, you need just beam slopes and that kind of thing. Preferably heavy armor, because as we've already seen, the AP on this is good. Like, 20 AP is actually decent for an AP shell. It'll get the job done. It'll do half damage to metal, and if it has enough kinetic damage, it'll punch through multiple meters of it. But heavy armor just immediately gets, is essentially a roadblock to, like, that kind of, not fully AP semi-penetrator like what this thing has. So, heavy armor. And how do you kill it? Well, the first thing I would like to mention, and this is from bitter experience, and there's like, oh, that stream still haunts my dreams. It doesn't actually, but every time I think about it, I cringe slightly. The Cult of Deus Ex Machina, this faction, especially if you leave them later in the Caravonian Rebellion, they make huge swarms of submarines, particularly down here. We've got these mini sub squadrons, and so if you get like a few of these, like you can just see over here, interesting. This is supposed to be a squadron, but it's not a squadron. There we go. It's the Harpoon class in particular. So you might be wondering why I'm mentioning this tiny little thing at all. It's because if you use just sonic torpedoes, like, you know, as people tend to use against submarines, they're like the first port of call because they're just really simple. If you get greedy, like I did, and I will in fact like post a link specifically to the stream where I had a headache with these things. If you get greedy and try and fight too many of these submarine swarms at once, and you turn the block count meter all the way up, your torpedoes are going to get distracted by just the sheer target-rich environment, and you're not going to be able to focus down any one craft in particular. And with the Cardinal class, you do want to focus this thing down because its railguns actually hurt a lot. They really do a lot of damage if you leave the thing alone too long. So, particularly if this thing is hanging out with a whole bunch of its little friends, you're going to want to avoid using just regular sonar torpedoes, regardless of whether they have signal processors on them or not. And you're going to want to use, like, laser-guided torpedoes, or PAC, or Supercav APS. And also just don't do what I did and, like, be restrained. Only fight a few submarines at a time. Like, there's no shame in it. And it'll also prevent lag, because my gods, the battles I had with the Cult of Deus Ex Machina were extremely laggy. And this is where, like, I kind of got overconfident back in the day. Like, I thought I could take it. I thought I could handle it. And I couldn't. So yeah, there is that. So, mind the swarms. And particle cannons is good, because particle cannons are just generally good for submarines in general. You could also swarm it with torpedo bombers. In fact, I'd say that's the best way to take care of this thing in a cost-effective manner. In fact, I will show you that right now. Of course, you can just use EMP if you're feeling cheap or mean or lazy. And, of course, you can use supercavitation railguns of your own. So, if I spawn you over there, and if I spawn in roughly cost equivalent amount of torpedo bombers, like, where is it? The Black Sparrow. I love these things. I am probably going to make torpedo bombers like this in the future, because they just worked really well. Really evasive, just good missiles and torps. It's just really good. So it takes about 5 of them to match it. So over here, because of that one turn, let's see here, what is equivalent to about 700k. It really is about, should spawn in like 7 of them, but I'm going to spawn in 5 in this wedge shape, and we're going to see how well they do. So immediately, evasive, keeping your distance, and those shells just whiff entirely. Whee! And the missiles didn't really do much. Simply because, well, they just didn't do much. And missiles were immune to that, and it looks like one of our boys just got disintegrated already. Lucky shots do happen, unfortunately. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see here that a sufficient torp swarm, simply because actually, like, these little torpedo interceptors are actually popping up out of the water a little bit, because they're confused, I guess. So yeah, if you can swarm this thing with enough torpedoes to make a mess of it. Incidentally, like, I just, for giggles, chucked this against the Megalodon just to see what happens. And the Megalodon won instantly because it has PAC EMP, so there is that. So yeah. And these little torps don't actually have... Hold on. Let's go have a look at you. Why? Oh dear. Yeah, so that is a unfortunate hit. This thing might have blown itself up with its own torpedo, actually, which is unfortunate. But yeah, that's basically it for the Cardinal class battle sub. Like I say, compared to neater godlies, like, it's not that amazing. But it can catch you off guard if you're not prepared for it. And like the Caravonian Rebellion has a few craft like that. There will be more. And let's see here. Do we have enough things coming in? We do. We do. You can see that this this little torp is damaged. This might not actually be enough torpedoes to deal with this thing consistently. Also, it looks like... Interesting. You really need to surround this with torpedoes if you really want to. Yep, there we go. Okay, there's a good volley. There we go. We're doing it. We're gonna nail it eventually. So yeah, that does it for the Cardinal class battle sub. There's not really a good Nita equivalent here. Like, you don't really get submerged battleships in the Nita campaign, which is kind of sad, but also a good thing because they're really strong. And, like, this thing is, like, has to follow Caravonian Rebellion rules, so it's got no EMP protection, and it relies on props to stay level in the water and stuff like that, and it's still decently scary, so... Yeah, you can imagine, like, someone going balls to the wall with the Nita criteria who can manage. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Support me on Patreon or a YouTube membership if you like. It really helps, and there's fun perks in it for you. Thank you to all my current supporters, and I will see you next time in From the Depths Most Wanted. Farewell.